Hey there everyone, and welcome to the True Crime Grapple Show. It's episode 26, and I'm your host Dan. Today we've got a big show in store for you, but before we get to it, we've got our iTunes reviews to address. Now, as promised, we will give you a mention on the show if you head on over to iTunes and drop us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. And what that kind of does is it just moves us up these iTunes charts, and it makes it easier for folks like yourselves to find us. So let's get on to them. We've got Newski1557, who was hypnotically drawn in by the show and is glad to have stumbled across it. Newski1557 also made me smile and blush by saying that I have a sexy accent. I'm still smiling and I'm still blushing, Newski, by the way. Thanks very much. And then we've got Spike LJK, who writes that the pod is well written and riveting and that they are the show's newest fan. So thanks so much to Spike LJK and to Newski1557. You're officially show legends. Now, a couple of episodes ago, I did send out that plea for you all to leave iTunes reviews, and by the way, we still want you to do that. We still need them. And you've been awesome in doing that, and you've responded in kind. But now we want you to do it again, this time with our voicemail service. About a month and a half ago, we set up a voicemail service, and we've only had one voicemail. So come on, lads and lasses, call in and leave a voicemail, and we'll play it at the end of the show. The number to call is 302-468-7477. That's 302-468-7477. And if you're calling from outside the US, make sure you put a +1 in front of the 302. All of that information is in the show notes, along with our usual social media info. Righto, show today is written by Jim Pitts, narrated and edited by me, Dan Kelton, and the music is by Baba Beats. So let's get into it. Lock your door, sit back and relax, because it's true crime time. The 9/11 of rock. On April 20th, 1999, which coincidentally was the day of the massacre at Columbine High School, Craig Ludwig of the Dallas Stars professional hockey team was playing golf with his good friend Vinnie, a musician, on his day off before the grueling National Hockey League playoffs began the next day. The Stars, one of the Stanley Cup favourites after finishing the season with the best record in the NHL, were hosting the Edmonton Oilers in Game 1 of the best-of-7 series at Reunion Arena. Craig, a leader on the team and one of the alternate captains, told Vinnie the team needed a new song to skate to during warm-ups since he found the current song boring. Vinnie was taken aback at the request since the playoffs started in just over 24 hours. But, being the friend he was, and a professional, Vinnie and his brother Darrell got their bandmates together and headed to the studio. After an all-night session, Vinnie and Darrell delivered their new song, Puck Off, to Craig, and the Stars had their new home warm-up song. After sweeping the Oilers in 4 games, including 2 at home, and winning the first 3 home games against the St. Louis Blues, the Stars were undefeated with the new song. Playing in St. Louis for Game 6 and leading the hard-fought series 3-2, Craig decided the Stars needed their good luck song in St. Louis. At 9 a.m. on May 17th, Craig calls Vinnie and Darrell wanting them to ship a copy of the song to St. Louis for arrival before the game later that evening. After, the brothers found a carrier to ship the song and sent it in plenty of time to arrive by game time. Unfortunately, storms hit the Dallas area that afternoon to delay all flights going out of the airport. The song didn't arrive at the Kiel Centre until right at the end of regulation, with the teams tied 1-1 heading into sudden death overtime for the 4th time out of 6 games between the two teams. Wasting no time, Craig cranked the volume up to 10 and blasted out the song Puck Off in the dressing room during the short intermission. Just over 2 minutes after play resumed, Mike Modano scored the series clinching goal to send the Stars into the conference finals. 1 month later, the Stars hoisted Lord Stanley's Cup as champions of the NHL, and some would say, thanks in no small part, to a heavy metal song by brothers Vinnie and Darrell Abbott and their Texas-based band, known as Pantera. Darrell Abbott was born at a small osteopathic hospital in Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex in North Texas on August 20th, 1966, to country music songwriter/producer Jerry Abbott and his wife Carolyn. He was the second son born to the couple, joining older brother, 2-year-old Vincent Paul Abbott. When he was born, his hair was blonde and straight, and by the age of 12 the colour had changed to a medium brown, but was still straight, so he convinced his mum to give him a perm to make it curly. Darrell loved his curly hair, and 3 months later Carolyn had to give him another perm. But from that point on, he never needed another one because his hair kept the curls, and that is what he would become known for. Darrell grew up as a normal kid in Arlington, Texas, one of the numerous mid-cities in between Dallas and Fort Worth. Between 1970 and 1980, Arlington grew from 90,000 to more than 160,000 people. Arlington is the home of the University of Texas at Arlington, the original Six Flags Over Texas, as well as a major assembly point for General Motors. In 1972, Arlington became the home of a professional sports team when the Washington Senators moved there and became the Texas Rangers. Playing next door to the Six Flags theme park at Old Arlington Stadium gave Arlington a national presence. Today, Arlington is the 7th largest city in Texas and the home of the world-famous Dallas Cowboys. According to family members, Darrell, just like most kids growing up in Arlington during the early 1970s, loved bicycles and skateboards. His parents got him a bright yellow Schwinn bicycle for his 10th birthday in 1976. He learned to pop wheelies and spin in circles in the back tyre of the Schwinn, spending most of his afternoons riding until he discovered skateboards. Another love of Darrell's childhood was guitars. Jerry would practice playing his guitar at home with a young Darrell as his audience, running around in circles until he would get dizzy and fall down laughing. Darrell would also help his father change the strings on his guitar. By this time, Jerry was working as a sound engineer at Pantego Sound, formerly Blue Royal Sound. Pantego Sound was owned by Charles Stewart, who had taken piano lessons from Jerry. It was located in Pantego, a small town near Fort Worth that was basically surrounded by Arlington. It was also during 1978 that Jerry and Carolyn divorced, with Jerry moving out and into his mobile home nearby. Jerry wanted to stay close to Vinnie and Darrell, both of whom were just discovering their musical talents at the time. Vinnie, after a failed attempt at playing the tuba in the school band, learned to play the drums, and soon he had his own drum kit set up in his bedroom. Not long after, Jerry asked Darrell what he wanted for his up-and-coming birthday. Since Vinnie was now a drummer, Darrell wanted to become a guitar player. For a starter guitar, Jerry got Darrell a Les Paul copy made by Hohner, plus a small amplifier. For a while, Darrell, with his now long curly hair, would just strap on the guitar, dress in an Ace Frehley Kiss costume made by his mum, and play air guitar in front of the mirror. In July 1978, the brothers would make the 30-mile trek west to Dallas to attend Texas Jam, a 3-day music festival at the Cotton Bowl Stadium. The festival would be headlined by Aerosmith and Ted Nugent, while also featuring Journey, Heart, Eddie Money, and Van Halen. Darrell immediately purchased the smash self-titled album Van Halen and wanted to learn the guitar lick from the Running with the Devil. He loved the guitar player and what became known as the Brown Sound. Darrell wanted to play guitar like Eddie Van Halen. Soon, the brothers were holding jam sessions in the garage with Darrell on guitar and Vinnie on drums. The first song they would play would be Deep Purple's 1973 song, Smoke in the Water, considered one of the greatest guitar anthems of all time. The first night they played it, they would play for more than 6 hours. Over time, the brothers would get a couple of friends from school to form a band in 1981. Heavily influenced by glam metal bands such as Quiet Riot, Night Ranger, Motley Crue and Def Leppard, the band was originally called Gemini and then Eternity before a classmate suggested Pantera, the Spanish word for panther. At first, they would be known as Pantera's Metal Magic before eventually shortening the name to just Pantera. Joining the brothers in the beginning were Terry Glaze as lead singer and Tommy Bradford as bass player. At first, Terry and Tommy did not want 14-year-old Darrell in the band, saying he was too young for the 16-year-olds. Vinnie refused, telling them that there would be no band without Darrell. With many opportunities to hang out with musicians at the Pantego Sound and ask questions, Darrell and Vinnie were soon looking to play their own gigs and make some money. The group would practice 10 or so cover songs until they got really good at playing them. Slowly, despite their age and with Jerry's help, the band began to pick up jobs here and there until they had a 3 or 4 night circuit. Individually, Darrell was winning guitar contests all over the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. As prizes, he won a light blue ESP electric guitar and then a Dean Flying V, and finally a Charvel Strat. His father told him to quit competing as to give others a chance to win guitars. In 1982, Bradford left the band at his girlfriend's request and was replaced by Rex Brown as bass player. Eventually, the band got a chance to play at the 1,500 seat indoor theatre at Six Flags Over Texas amusement park. More than 3,500 fans showed up to see Pantera. Pantera was a hit in North Texas. In 1983, the group was ready to release its first album. They decided to change their names to fit the glam metal genre and to avoid the brothers' association and direct comparisons to Van Halen. Vinnie Abbott became Vinnie Paul, Terry Glaze became Terry Lee, Rex Brown became Rex Rocker, and Darrell Abbott became Diamond Darrell Lance from the Kiss song Black Diamond. Jerry Abbott became known as Eldon or just LD. The first album, Metal Magic, a nod to their former band name, and critically, in retrospect, was not very well received, except for Darrell's guitar playing ability. The next album, Projects in the Jungle, was released in July 1984, along with the group's first music video. Critically, the album was much better received, except for Glaze's vocals. One critic described his vocals as ear-assaulting. The original incarnation of Pantera would release one more album together, I Am the Night, in 1986. The album would become more focused on heavier metal while still rooted in glam metal. Glaze felt his style was more suited and glam, and therefore a change was made as 18-year-old Phil Anselmo joined Pantera as lead singer in 1987. Glaze would go on to join Lord Tracy and secure a major label deal while Pantera was still struggling. The first album release with Anselmo's lead singer was 1988's Power Metal, a mix of 1980s hard rock and thrash metal, a definite departure from the glam metal sound of the previous albums. According to Anselmo, their intention, quote, was to be the most devastating hardcore heavy metal band in the world. It was at this point that Darrell caught the attention of Megadeth's Dave Mustaine, formerly of Metallica. Megadeth needed a guitarist, and Mustaine asked Darrell to join the band. Darrell insisted that Vinnie join also as a drummer, but since Megadeth already had a drummer, Mustaine instead hired Marty Friedman. Darrell and Vincent renewed their efforts with Pantera, and in 1989, thanks to a flight delay due to Hurricane Hugo, they were able to sign a contract with a major record label, Atco Records. With a major deal came new equipment for Pantego Sound and a new producer for Pantera called Terry Date. By June 1990, the new album Cowboys from Hell was released and it became a breakthrough success for Pantera. Eventually, the album would rank number 11 on Guitar World's 2006 list of greatest guitar albums of all time. It would also be certified both gold and platinum in the US and gold in the UK. The success of the album would give Pantera a world tour, opening for Judas Priest in Europe. In August 1991, the band was voted to join the Monsters of Rock tour for a performance in Moscow at the Tushino airfield in what was, at the time, the Soviet Union. On September 28, 1991, Pantera took to the stage in front of 500,000 people celebrating freedom just 3 months before the collapse of the Soviet Union. Some estimates have more than 1 million people attending the free concert. Other bands performing were AC/DC, Motley Crue, Metallica and the Black Crowes. Pantera's performance of the song Cowboys from Hell is featured as a playable song in several video games. Next, Pantera joined the band Skid Row on a North American tour in early 1992. Lead singer Sebastian Bach would describe Pantera as a, quote, kind of new Judas Priest, meets ZZ Top, meets Van Halen, divided by Slayer, equals its own kind of thing. By February 1992, Vulgar Display of Power was released, and it became Pantera's most influential album. The album would spend 79 weeks on the Billboard album charts and was certified double platinum. It would be listed as one of the 1001 albums you must hear before you die reference book, and was voted number 1 on Loudwire's top 11 metal albums of the 1990s. In the July 2000 issue of Playboy, Charles M. Young said that it, quote, set the standard for the 90s metal to come, Limp Bizkit, Korn, Tool, and all the others. 2 years later, in March 1994, Pantera would release their 7th studio album, Far Beyond Driven. It was the first album not recorded at Pantego Sound Studio. Instead, it was recorded in Nashville. Far Beyond Driven would become Pantera's fastest selling album, reaching number 1 on the Billboard 200 and being certified platinum in both US and Canada. At this point, Darrell decided that Diamond Darrell didn't fit the band's aggressive groove metal. Given his enjoyment of marijuana, he decided Dimebag Darrell was a much better name. With much more success came bigger venues for the band. With bigger venues came bigger crowds at the concerts. With bigger crowds came bigger problems for the venues. At the Coca-Cola Starplex Amphitheatre in Dallas's Fair Park, also the home of the Cotton Bowl, crowds got out of control. The Dallas Morning News' Michael Corcoran described the 14,000 audience as, quote, the wildest, scariest, most pumped up audience I've ever been a part of. I half expected to see the vendors going through the crowd yelling, raw meat, get your raw meat. The only difference between a riot and a Pantera concert is that cops don't ride horses at a Pantera show. In Shreveport, Louisiana, Pantera had to cancel a concert at the Hirsch Coliseum due to a recent Louisiana law outlawing open-floor seating at concerts. With metal folding chairs in the audience, the band decided it was too dangerous to play there and cancelled at the last minute. With almost 3,000 Pantera fans not happy with the cancellation, a riot broke out, resulting in 4 people arrested for what the New Orleans Times-Picayune described as, quote, battery, inciting a riot, and cruelty to an animal after an angry patron punched a police horse in the neck. 6 days later, back in Dallas at the Fair Park Coliseum, crowds ripped up large plywood boards that covered the ice used by the Dallas Freeze minor league hockey team, using some as surfboards while others were set on fire. With all the money and success, Darrell stayed close to home. In June 1995, he and long-term girlfriend Rita Haney would buy a house in Dalworthington Gardens, a small city that bordered Pantego and was also surrounded by Arlington. Rita and Darrell would never officially marry, but they were together long enough to seem like they were. They had known each other since the 3rd grade, when Rita would spend afternoons at her aunt's house in the same Arlington neighbourhood as the Abbotts. Soon, they became best friends, riding bikes along their bike trails. A couple of years later, they would attend their first concert together, Kiss, in 1979. Rita's aunt would move away and the two lost touch, but music would bring them back together, even only as friends. Rita would often try and set Darrell up with her friends. In 1984, he tried to kiss her, which she thought was weird, but she also realised that she liked him too. They became a couple on December 4th, 1984. At the new home in Dalworthington Gardens, Darrell and Rita would live in a very nondescript house, except for the mean and obnoxious purple-bearded goat that Darrell let roam around the yard. Far Beyond Driven would give hints at trouble behind the scenes for Pantera. At the time of release, Anselmo was suffering from degenerative disc disease and ruptured discs in his back. For the pain, he began drinking heavily and abusing painkillers and muscle relaxants. He would eventually begin to use heroin. The first single from the album, I'm Broken, was about Anselmo's back pain. It would be 2 years before the next Pantera album, The Great Southern Trendkill, would be released, with the band returning to their Texas roots, recording the music at Darrell's Chasing Jason Studios in his backyard at his house in Dalworthington Gardens. Due to tension and conflicts within the band, Anselmo would record his vocals in New Orleans at Trent Reznor's Nothing Studios. The album would be released on May 6, 1996, and would be backed by Pantera's co-headlining summer tour with White Zombie. Tension with Anselmo would get worse when the tour marked Pantera's return to Dallas Coca-Cola Starplex Amphitheatre on July 13, 1996. Anselmo would accidentally overdose on heroin and claim to have died for 4 or 5 minutes. While debuting at number 4 on the Billboard 200, rising as high as number 2, and selling 500,000 copies in 6 months, commercially, The Great Southern Trendkill was considered a disappointment when compared to expectations. With a disappointing album and Anselmo's drug use and tension, it would be 4 years before Pantera released another album, but the band did stay busy. They toured with Kiss in South America in 1997 and Black Sabbath in North America in 1999, along with a couple of Ozfests in between tours. Vinnie and Darrell branched out and opened an all-nude strip bar in northwest Dallas called the Clubhouse. The original idea of a rock and roll golf course with a strip club at the 19th hole proved too costly, but the brothers could afford to open the strip club. Soon, the Clubhouse became very profitable as it became a go-to place for musicians travelling through Dallas and Fort Worth. But with celebrity owners, many Dallas professional athletes regularly stopped by the club. Through these connections, and as big fans of the team, Vinnie and Darrell would become good friends with many of the players of the Dallas Stars hockey team, including the aforementioned Craig Ludwig. On the afternoon of June 19th, 1999, the Dallas Stars were preparing to play Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals in Buffalo, New York, needing one more win to bring hockey's ultimate prize back to Dallas. Ludwig called Vinnie and told him that if the Stars won that night, be ready for a championship party when the team returned to Dallas. The Stars did win that night, in 3 overtimes on a memorable goal by hockey legend Brett Hull, and the team returned to Dallas ready to celebrate with their biggest fans, Darrell and Vinnie. The party began at the Big Apple Bar in Arlington before moving to Vinnie's place with the Stanley Cup in tow to party with strippers from the Clubhouse. At one point during the party, Hockey Hall of Famer Guy Carbonneau, who at 39 was one of the Stars' oldest players, decided to throw the fabled Stanley Cup off Vinnie's balcony to Ludwig, who was in the Crown Royal-shaped pool below. The Stanley Cup fell just short, bouncing on the edge of the pool and into the water and then sinking to the bottom. The impact produced a large dent in the trophy. The keeper of the cup at the time denied this story and claimed the dent occurred when one of the players dropped the trophy in the locker room celebration. But Vinnie and the players confirmed the true story of Guy, the pool, and the dent. Pantera was soon back in the studio recording tracks for their 9th studio album, Reinventing the Steel. It would be Pantera's last album. In August 1999, the brothers learned that their mother, Carolyn, was diagnosed with lung cancer. She would die on September 12, 1999. With all of their success with their father, it was Carolyn who provided stability in Darrell and Vinnie's life, even as adults. As teenagers, she provided them with the freedom to express and find themselves as musicians. Friends would say it would be years before either one of the brothers talked about her passing. She would be buried in Arlington at Moore Memorial Gardens Cemetery. The album would be released on March 21st, 2000 and immediately entered the Billboard 200 at number 4, just like the Great Southern Trendkill. Despite all their setbacks, Pantera showed they could still sell records. The album would be a critical success. It was voted Album of the Year by Metal Edge readers and ranked number 2 on Guitar World's readers' the top 10 guitar albums of 2000. The end of Pantera could actually be traced to September 11th, 2001. The night before, the band flew out of New York to Ireland to begin a European tour. When the group landed and learned of what had happened in New York, they decided to cancel the tour and return back to Arlington. They would spend 2 weeks stranded in Ireland, waiting to travel back to Texas. When they finally got back home, the group decided to take a short hiatus of 6 months to refocus. During the break, Anselmo formed a couple of new bands and brought along Rex Brown. The Abbott brothers began to wonder if Pantera still existed. As the break grew longer and longer, Anselmo and Brown grew further and further apart from Pantera and the Abbotts. Darrell and Vinnie gave up waiting for Anselmo and Brown to return and officially disbanded Pantera. When it was over, it was evident it wasn't a clean or amicable breakup. Lines had been drawn between the Abbott brothers and Anselmo and Brown. The fan base was forced to choose sides, and intense debates filled internet message boards. On February 1st, 2003, while watching the New England Patriots win Super Bowl 38 over the Carolina Panthers in Houston, Darrell and Vinnie decided to start another band. Along with Pat Lachman and Bob Kakaha, the Abbott brothers launched Damage Plan. Their first album, Newfound Power, was released on February 10th, 2004. Most of 2004 was spent on a tour bus with the plan to record a follow-up album as soon as the tour was completed in December. Throughout his career, Darrell dreamed of playing with all of his rock idols, such as Kiss, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath and Van Halen. By fall 2004, he had accomplished 3 of the 4, with the exception being Van Halen. Ace Frehley of Kiss probably had the most influence on Darrell specifically. Darrell would have Frehley's face tattooed on his chest, and when Frehley autographed it, Darrell had that tattooed also. Darrell once said, quote, "If there were no Ace Frehley, there would have been no Dimebag Darrell." While Ace Frehley had the most influence on Darrell, Eddie Van Halen was a close second. For the band Pantera, Van Halen was probably the most influential, with the Abbott brothers playing guitar and drums, just like the Van Halen brothers. Eddie Van Halen built a recording studio, 5150, at his home, so Darrell did also. When Van Halen did a reunion tour with Sammy Hagar in 2004, Darrell campaigned hard to have Damage Plan open for Van Halen, but to no avail. When the tour rolled into Dallas on September 25th, 2004, Darrell was there on stage with Van Halen, albeit off to the side out of view of the crowd and not playing. Darrell didn't care. He got to meet Eddie Van Halen. By this time in his career, many would consider Darrell and Eddie to be peers, but not Darrell. That night, he reverted to a starstruck teenager meeting his idol for the first time. He would tell Rita later that night, quote, "If I died tonight, it wouldn't matter because I've done everything now." Also that night, Darrell offered to buy one of Eddie's black and yellow striped Charvel Bumblebee hybrid VH2 guitars, similar to the one pictured in Van Halen 2's artwork. He was ready to pay $30,000 that night for one of Van Halen's guitars, but Eddie Van Halen told Dimebag that he would make one special for him. Darrell would call Eddie and leave a voicemail message expressing his thanks, calling the experience, quote, "the most awesome, uplifting, euphoric, spiritual rock and roll extravaganza ever." Damage Plan would finish the Devastation Across the Nation tour with Shadows Fall and Haunted, closing out in New York City on November 29th, 2004. But while Damage Plan's album sales were strong, they weren't close to Pantera's, so the band accepted a couple more concert dates before returning to Arlington to record their next album. 6 more dates were further booked in for Connecticut, New York, New Jersey and Ohio. The last 2 dates, December 8th and December 9th, were scheduled for the Alrosa Villa Club in Columbus, Ohio. It would be the band's 50th and 51st shows of the tour. Alrosa Villa on the north side of Columbus at 5055 Sinclair Road was a small venue holding only 600 people for a concert. It was the oldest continuously operating rock hall in the United States. The morning of December 8th was much like many other mornings on the tour. The Damage Plan bus arrived at Alrosa Villa early in the morning while the members of the tour slept. Darrell, Vinnie and the others would continue to sleep most of the day. Around 4 p.m, a fan named Nathan Gale approached the tour bus and asked a security guard where Darrell and Vinnie were. The guard told him that they were asleep on the bus and that he would have to leave. Gale left without incident. No one realised that Gale was the same person who, just 8 months earlier at a Damage Plan concert at Bogart's in Cincinnati, Ohio, had jumped onto the stage and caused $1,800 worth of equipment damage. Gale had told friends that he blamed Darrell for the breakup of Pantera and that Pantera had stolen songs from him. He also claimed they were trying to steal his identity. Officers labelled Gale's actions that night as criminal, but charges were never filed because band members did not want to return to Cincinnati for court hearings. That night at Alrosa Villa in Columbus, about 250 people paid $8 a ticket to see two local openers, Volume Dealer and 12 Gauge, and then Damage Plan. Outside, Gale waited in the bitter cold. Someone asked him why he wasn't inside where it was warm watching the show. Gale responded, quote, "I don't want to see no shitty local bands. I'm going to wait for Damage Plan." Gale was a construction worker from Marysville, Ohio, a suburb of Columbus. He had enlisted in the Marines in 2002, but left later in 2004, telling his mother and former boss that he was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. At 6'5" and 268 pounds, he played offensive guard for the Lima Thunder, a semi-professional football team. On the team bus, Gale was known for listening to Pantera during road trips. That night, his head was shaved and he wore thick glasses, as well as a Columbus Blue Jackets hockey sweater over his hooded sweatshirt. Shortly after 10 p.m, Damage Plan was ready for the show. As usual, to begin the show, Darrell looked at Vinnie and said, "Van Halen." As Damage Plan took to the stage, Gale was on a mission. He climbed over the 8-foot security fence, ran past security and through a side door. He walked quickly past the pool tables and the bar and went straight to the left side of the stage. As luck would have it, the band's head of security, Jeffrey Mayhem Thompson, was moving back to the left side of the stage. Lackman and Kakaha moved towards the front of the stage, giving Gale an unimpeded path to Darrell. Partially hidden by 7-foot-high stacks of amplifiers and wearing a dark hoodie, Gale slow-jogged across the stage past Kakaha and Lackman. From Mayhem's position, he could only chase Gale instead of cutting him off. Slowing down to a walk, with a 9mm Beretta M9 handgun in his extended right hand, with his left hand supporting his right wrist, Gale shot a headbanging Darrell with his long, curly hair in his face 3 times at point-blank range at 10:15 p.m. Damage Plan was halfway through the first song of the set, Breathing New Life. The first shot struck Darrell in the right cheek and left ear, probably killing him instantly. Mayhem grabbed Gale as 2 more shots struck Darrell in the back of his head and in the right hand, while a 4th shot struck tour manager Chris Paluska in the chest. As Darrell fell to the ground, his fabled guitar began to emit high-pitched feedback. During the struggle with Mayhem, Gale was able to get his right hand free and shoot Mayhem 3 times. Jeffrey Mayhem Thompson was pronounced dead at the scene. The carnage wasn't over though. Erin Halk, a 29-year-old who was working security at a Los Villa, charged Gale trying to ambush him behind the drum riser while Gale was reloading. Halk was shot 6 times, including 4 in the chest. Erin Halk, the big bearded former US Marine, was pronounced dead at the scene. Nathan Bray, a 23-year-old fan from Grove City, Ohio, who jumped over the security barrier and leapt up onto the stage to help Darrell and Mayhem, was Gale's next target, shooting him once in the chest. Still alive, he was rushed to Riverside Methodist Hospital but did not survive the gunshot. The 4th and final fatality of the night, Nathan Bray, was pronounced dead at 11:10 p.m. Travis Burnett, a fan in the audience, jumped on stage and went after Gale. A bullet glanced off his left arm as he tried to grab the gun. Johnny Cat Brooks, a 30-year-old stage technician, was shot 3 times, including twice in the leg, trying to get the gun away from Gale. Still alive, he was taken hostage by Gale. Nearby in his cruiser on Sinclair Road, Columbus police officer James Niggemere, just 18 minutes into his shift, heard the report of shots fired at a Los Villa. Being not far away, Niggemere rushed to the scene, arriving backstage with a 12-gauge Remington Model 870 shotgun. Gale, with the Beretta at Brooks' temple, started moving towards the back of the club. Niggemere fired once from 20 feet away, killing Gale with a bullet to the back of the head at 10:18 p.m. The entire shooting took just 3 minutes. Investigators would later find another 35 bullets unused by Gale. There were other heroes that night. William Weaver, a 33-year-old fan from Mount Vernon, Ohio, trained in CPR, rushed on stage to give Mayhem mouth-to-mouth while Jimmy Van Fossen, a 33-year-old EMT from Reynoldsburg, Ohio, did chest compressions even while the shooting continued. Mindy Reese, a registered nurse from Columbus, rushed forward to help Darrell. Fans dragged Darrell off the stage, where she did chest compressions until paramedics arrived. But it wasn't enough. On December 8th, 2004 at 10:38 p.m, Dimebag Darrell Lance Abbott was pronounced dead at the age of 38. Ironically, 24 years earlier, on December 8th, 1980, at about 10:50 p.m, John Lennon was also shot and killed by a crazed fan, Mark David Chapman. Darrell's funeral was held on Tuesday, December 14th in 2004 in Arlington, Texas. He was buried in a KISS casket, personally donated by Gene Simmons. Simmons said in a statement, quote, "There were a limited number made and I sent mine to the family of Dimebag Darrell. He requested in his will to be buried in a KISS casket, as he sort of learned his rock and roll roots by listening to us for some strange reason." The big question for the funeral was which guitar to bury Darrell with. Rita would tell Billboard magazine, quote, "I remember talking to Vinnie, trying to decide what guitar to bury him with. 3 hours later, Eddie called to see if he could do anything for us and for Dime. When he came to the funeral, he brought his original yellow and black from 1979. He said, quote, "Dime was an original, and only an original deserves an original." Terry Glaze would later say about Darrell and the guitar, quote, You know what? If back in the old days when we first started, if you would have told Darrell that when you die, Van Halen is going to put that guitar in your casket, Darrell would have said, kill me now. As well as the guitar, bottles of Crown Royal were also placed in the casket. Darrell was buried next to his mother at Moore Memorial Gardens Cemetery in Arlington. That night at the Arlington Convention Centre, a public memorial service was held to honour Dimebag Darrell Abbott. Several thousand fans showed up, along with a virtual who's who of the heavy metal world. Zakk Wylde, lead guitarist for Ozzy Osbourne, and Eddie Van Halen downed shots of liquor as they eulogised Darrell. As tears ran down his face, Wylde struggled to get through the speech. Eddie plays the voicemail Darrell left him several months ago. Despite a rift between him and the Abbotts, Rex Brown mumbles a few unscheduled words, looking like an old ghost, according to Terry Glaze. In Dallas, but conspicuously absent from the funeral and the memorial service, was Phil Anselmo. Vinnie and Rita did not want him there. Anselmo mourns by himself in a hotel room. When Vinnie came on the stage, he carried a life-size cutout of his brother. He encourages the audience to chant, "Dimebag, Dimebag, Dimebag." He doesn't speak long, finishing with, quote, "The brightest and biggest star in Texas is shining tonight. That's my fucking brother Dimebag. Give it up," as tears fell from his eyes. With scheduled eulogies, surprise speakers and performances, the memorial service would last 3 hours. Tributes would continue for many years after Darrell's death. Dean Guitars would continue with the release of the signature Razorback guitars they had been planning with Darrell in the weeks before his death. Disturbed's 2005 album, 10,000 Fists, was dedicated to Darrell. Frontman David Draiman told Rolling Stone magazine that, quote, "The day Darrell died was the 9/11 of rock. A little of us died that day too." Nickelback would record Side of a Bullet with lyrics about Darrell. In 2003, Darrell contributed to Nickelback and Kid Rock's cover of Elton John's Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting. Wylde would dedicate his song In This River to Darrell. Brides of Destruction, a supergroup featuring Motley Crue's Nikki Sixx, released the song Dimes in Heaven in 2005. Cross Canadian Ragweed, a Texas country music band, recorded Dimebag to honour the cowboy from hell on a twisted trail. Many bands, including Anthrax and Alice in Chains, added Pantera songs to their concert sets. Anthrax considered Darrell to be, quote, basically the sixth member of Anthrax, according to bassist Frank Bello. Vinnie made a brief return to music in February 2005 at a benefit for the Dimebag Darrell Memorial Fund. The fund was established to cover the medical and funeral expenses of the victims of the Al Rosa Villa shooting. Damage Plan would disband after Darrell's murder. After the appearance at the benefit, Vincent Paul Abbott took an 18-month break from music. He eventually joined the metal supergroup Hell Yeah in 2006. He died in June 2018 at his Las Vegas home due to coronary artery disease. Shortly before his death, Vinnie laid down the drum tracks for Hell Yeah's 6th album. The album, Welcome Home, was released on September 27th, 2019. Vinnie was buried next to his mother and brother at Moore Memorial Gardens Cemetery in Arlington, Texas. Negemuir would testify before a grand jury after the shooting, standard procedure when deadly force is used. The grand jury found that Negemuir was justified in his actions and no wrongdoing on his part. He would be nominated for a Bravery Award by the television show America's Most Wanted. Negemuir would return on patrol for another 3 years until doctors advised the city not to allow him to be a first responder anymore due to post-traumatic stress and severe anxiety disorder. He was transferred to the robbery division as a detective until taking a non-police job with the city in 2011. The Alrosa Villa nightclub would reopen just 1 month after and is still hosting concerts in 2019. Albert Cutuella, the 91-year-old owner of the Alrosa Villa Club, died at Riverside Methodist Hospital just a month after the shootings. He had fallen ill the morning after the shootings, right after his son Rick, the manager of the club, told him about what had happened the night before. Some consider him to be the 5th victim of the shootings. The legacy of Pantera still continues today. Rarely played in the radio, the band was still able to sell almost 10 million albums and influenced a generation of heavy metal band into the 2000s and today. Darrell even created a drink that is still popular today, especially with the metal crowd. He called it Blacktooth Grin, and it consisted of 2 shots of Seagram 7, 2 shots of Crown Royal, and a dash of Coca-Cola. It would be Pantera's official drink. In 2005, Damageplan manager Paul Baseman revealed that several unreleased recordings were almost finished at the time of Darrell's death. Vinnie would confirm this some months before his own death. To date, none have been released. There you have it, folks. Episode 26 is in the books. Let us know what you thought of this episode on our social media page and about Pantera in general. And thanks as ever to Jim for the writing of the show, and a job well done. We'll get Jim back for a special bonus episode on this show because I'd love to hear more about his thoughts on Pantera in general and the legacy that was left behind by Dimebag. That's me done for another show though. You'll hear from me in 2 weeks' time with a brand new episode. So until then, I've been your host Dan, and stay safe out there.